first want to thank all the members of the American Film Institute for having invited all of us here tonight for the Los Angeles premiere of and to all of you in the audience for all that we're doing tonight to support the memory and work of our great director, George Hickenlooper. I know that it was a source of the greatest excitement for George to know that the reviews and the accolades and the attention that this film was receiving. To know that people were finally beginning to discover his enormous talent for storytelling. And to see this sold-out audience here tonight to share in his work, to understand the way in which he was dedicated to certain principles and certain ideals, would have made him a very happy man tonight. He took great pride in the fact that people were beginning to take a serious look at this film, at his contribution to it, to his point of view, and his political interests. A week and 2 days ago, we lost George in Denver. And for those of us who feel his passing is almost unbelievable, for those here tonight who may be feeling that his death is so strange, difficult to comprehend, because he wasn't with us, but was far away, should know this. George was in Denver to attend a political rally for his cousin, John Hickenlooper. He made a documentary about his cousin when he was the mayor of Denver called Hicktown, which is a marvelous piece of filmmaking. And George believed that John Hickenlooper was on his way to becoming the next governor of the state of Colorado. Those of us who knew George's huge appetite for politics, what inspired and what we find frustrating about public service, were not surprised that his last night was spent attending a political rally to ensure his cousin winning the election. And particularly proud was George that John Hickenlooper refused to go negative on his opponent. That he ran a campaign that was based on his ideas and not on the damage he could do to his rival. And I'm sure that George was in over the moon that John Hickenlooper won the governorship on Tuesday night by a wide margin. Perhaps none of you will know is that I was cast in this film on Facebook. It's true, it was on Facebook that George had written on his Facebook page that he thought I would be a good candidate to play Jack Abramoff. And my producing partner, David Renee, then quotes George. And before I knew it, George was on a plane to London. Now, 2 years ago, where we spent the entire day discussing the script, the story, and our mutual interest in politics. And from that day, through pre-production, through 5 weeks of filming, to our last night together at the Toronto Film Festival where we premiered this film a little more than a month ago, he was one of the most enthusiastic and talented directors that I have worked with. He was enormously proud of this film. I'd like to believe that he brought out the best in me, and I brought out the best in him. And while it may be ironic in some twist of fate, like the line that is repeated again and again from T.S. Eliot's The Four Quartets, in my beginning is my end. Even though he's no longer with us, George would want people to discover this film. And while we can't always look back, but must look forward, perhaps this film will do what George most hoped: entertain, provoke, and shed light on what happens when money and power and influence dampen the political process and damage the respect that all citizens should have for public service. Now, it is also important to George that people see his humor. what is inherently funny about outrageous behavior and how we can learn, even through comedy, about the errors of our ways. So for him, tonight, don't be afraid to laugh. He would have wanted it that way, and George would also have wanted me to thank those who are with us tonight who knew him best, and to show our appreciation for their presence this evening. First, I want to say how grateful we all are for George's family, to have had the strength to come and share this night with all of you. George's mother, B.J. Wenger, is here, and George's brother, Frank Wenger, are here. Thank you for coming. If you would allow me to bring onto the stage George's collaborators who worked so tirelessly on this film. Hold your applause until I get through and up to the cast. Norman Snyder, screenwriter. Gary Housen, producer. George Zack, producer. Dana Bernetti, executive producer. Warren Ninja, executive producer. Richard Rionda, executive producer. Donald Zuckerman, executive producer. Jonathan Dorfman and Temple Fennell, ATO Pictures, distributors. Guys. And now it is my pleasure to bring up here the company of actors that George gathered to make up this ensemble, all of whom George adored and was so grateful and so admiring of their work. The cast of Casino Jack, Barry Pepper, John Levin, Spencer Garrett, and John Lewis. I just want to leave you with this one last thing. There was a very strange moment in the AMC documentary that followed George around at this year's Toronto Film Festival when George was having his haircut. He suddenly started talking about death. And it turns out that George's greatest fear about dying was that death would be boring. Well, as you're all about to find out, the last thing George Hickenlooper was boring. This one's for you, George. We hope you enjoyed the movie. Thank you.